At dinner, the moment I offered a small opinion, my daughter-in-law slammed her fork on the table and shouted, "Shut up, you're just a widow." I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I simply stood, set my fork down, and walked out of that house. The next morning, they realized what they had lost. And it wasn't money, it was their mother. My name is Margaret Thompson. I am 68 years old. For the past few years, I had been living in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in Edison, New Jersey, in a modest, single-family home with my son and his wife. After my husband passed, I found myself wondering, quietly, privately, what family would mean for me now. My husband, Robert, was a steady, gentle man. He taught middle school for decades. Even after he retired, he volunteered at the library and helped neighborhood kids with their homework. He didn't talk much, but he was unfailingly decent. At home, he held me and our son up with a quiet warmth that never wavered. About 6 years ago, he mentioned he wasn't feeling quite right. It seemed small at first, a cough that lingered, tiredness that didn't lift. The diagnosis came fast and hard, stage 4 lung cancer. A few months at best, the doctor said. I remember sitting there, hands clasped around my purse, and for a moment it felt like I forgot how to breathe. His fight was short. Through it all, he stayed kind. On one calm afternoon, he took my hand and said, almost teasing me, "I'm going first. But I'm not worried about you. You'll be all right. You're someone who knows how to live." He smiled when he said it. That smile is still somewhere inside me, warm and bright. It was the moment I became on my own. After the funeral, I thought I would find a small place for myself. Maybe a tidy little apartment with sunlight in the afternoon and a balcony for potted geraniums. I pictured a shelf with his photo and his old watch, a candle I could light in the evenings. Quiet days, simple errands, a life measured in small, steady steps. But not long after we laid him to rest, my son, Daniel, took my hands in his and said, "Mom, come live with us. We've got a spare room. I worry about you being alone. It's just better to have someone close as you get older. Please?" His words surprised me. They also filled me with a soft, swelling joy. I had spent more than 40 years with Robert, holding our life together between us. Even so, hearing Daniel ask me and hearing him want me there made me believe I still had a home in someone else's life, that my days were not done serving the people I loved. "Well then," I said, light rising somewhere in my chest, "I'll take you up on that. I'll let you take care of me for a while." I moved in on a gentle spring day, when the maples along the block were just unfurling their new leaves. My boxes were few, a week's worth of clothes, some kitchen things I had used for decades because they fit my hands, Robert's wristwatch, a framed photo of the three of us when we were all so young we thought time would never catch us. The picture rattled softly as the car pulled into the driveway. Daniel and his wife Emily met me at the door with smiles. Their little girl, Lily, ran up on her stubby legs and wrapped her fingers around mine. I squeezed back, just once, and whispered in my heart, "Thank you." From that day, a new rhythm began. I woke before everyone else. I brewed coffee, whisked eggs, browned a pan of breakfast potatoes, cut fruit into easy pieces. I packed lunches, sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, apple slices in baggies, a cookie tucked into the corner. I ran the vacuum. I wiped the counters until they shone. By late morning, I'd walk to the grocery store, list in hand. In the afternoon, I often helped with Lily's pickup from preschool. We would stop on the way home for bananas or a single flower, just because. And some part of every day, usually on the back patio where the sunlight is soft, I would sit with Robert's picture and talk. "How are things up there, love?" I'd murmur. "Down here, I'm doing all right. I'm finding my way." Even with the house filled, there was a hollow inside me I could not deny. Robert was gone. The quiet we'd shared, the kind that comes from years of knowing, was gone too. But the small moments of family life began to lay themselves across that hollow. One moment, then another. I read to Lily before bed, the same book, night after night. She asked the same questions and I gave the same answers. We sang the ABCs in silly voices. We colored side by side and taped her masterpieces to the fridge. Sometimes I taught her to fold paper into little hats and boats. We'd float the boats in a bowl of water on the back step and clap as they leaned and sank. Each tiny thing put a soft flower in my chest. Little blooms of grace. At dinner, Daniel told stories from work, funny little office moments, small victories. Emily shared recipes she had found online. Sometimes she asked me how I used to make things in my day. "Mom, the stew you made last week?" "It was wonderful," she said once. "Would you make it again?" That kind of question loosened a tightness I hadn't realized I was carrying. "Oh," it said, "you belong." It said, "Stay." Their kindness sent me to my little memorial shelf more than once. "Robert," I would whisper, touching his picture frame, "they're doing so well." Work. Parenting. The house. They're stronger and wiser than we were at their age. Sometimes in the lamplight, I could almost swear his mouth looked softer. Like he might smile if the moment stretched a second longer. I know it was only the way shadows fell, but believing it, just a little, steadying me greatly. These days, I've decided, family. Maybe nothing more and nothing less than the wish to be useful to someone, to make a difference in the small, daily ways. I was grateful. I said it to myself every night. Thank you for this second season. Thank you for time to share. In the beginning, I worked with a glad heart. I rose early and moved quietly so I wouldn't wake anyone. I scrambled eggs, toasted bread, bagged snacks. I hung laundry on sunny days. I dusted the baseboards, got down on my knees to wipe the corners. I took a brush to the range hood, got the grease out from under that edge where it always hides. Near noon, I walked to get Lily. For snack, I made treats I knew from my own childhood, peanut butter cookies. With the crosshatch pattern, soft and warm, set on a dish to cool. We ate them leaning over napkins, laughing when crumbs fell onto our shirts. "Mom, this helps so much," Emily said one day, her shoulders dropping with relief. "Really, thank you." The words went straight to my chest. They pushed heat behind my eyes. I swallowed hard and smiled. I am useful, I told myself. I am still family. But it didn't last forever. The change was small at first. So small you could miss it if you weren't listening. It began in the way Emily spoke to me. One morning, I was in the kitchen the way I always was, laying out bread, spreading butter, slicing tomatoes for lunch. The sunlight was coming in low across the countertop. The house was quiet. Emily came in, soft-footed, and she said, "Gentle as anything, Mom. Starting today, I'll take care of the kitchen. I want to try some new recipes." Her voice was smooth. She smiled when she said it. It would have been easy to take offense, but it was also easy to meet her kindness with my own. "Well," I said lightly, "now I'm excited. I'll set the table. Thank you for cooking." I meant it. I tried to. But after that morning, I didn't handle the knife much. I didn't wet the cutting board or plan the grocery list. Breakfast took on Emily's flavor and pace. And for the packed lunches, the store-bought frozen meals started to appear more often, stacked in tidy rows in the freezer. I tucked napkins into the lunchboxes. That was all. My mornings felt different. The hours didn't have a place to rest. I found myself standing longer at Robert's photo, talking to him about the weather, about the squirrel with the ragged tail who runs the fence line, about nothing at all. "What are you making today?" I asked the picture once, trying to laugh. "I think I'll let you feed everyone and I'll just wash up." The emptiness didn't show outside. I still moved. I still smiled. But there was a soft, dull ache in the middle of the day where my small usefulness had lived. Another day, Lily tipped her bowl at dinner and milk splashed across the table. Before I could think, I stood, napkins already in my hand, the old reflex of mothering rising up in me like breath. "Mom," Emily said. The word was careful, firm but light. "Please don't. I want her to clean it up herself." My hand hung there, frozen in the air, napkins fanned out, not sure where to land. "Right," I said after a moment. "Of course." My voice sounded thinner than usual. I'm not sure anyone else heard it, but I did. And that's how it went, in small steps. Little adjustments, gentle words that felt like a closed door, even when the doorknob was warm. Still, I tried to hold my shape, to soften where I could, to stay grateful, to tell Robert night after night that I was all right, that he needn't worry, that his trust in me was not misplaced. You already know where the road led. I told you in the beginning. You know about that dinner. You know about the fork, and the words no one should hear in their own home. But before that ending, there were all these moments. The good ones, bright as sun through leaves. The small cuts that came so quiet, I barely saw them happen. The second life I began so full of hope. The way I kept trying to be useful. The way I kept telling myself, this is family. This is where you belong. After that, I stopped getting out ahead of people. Before I said anything, I paused. Before I reached out to help, I lowered my eyes and waited. As if my very presence might become someone's extra work. As if I were learning, day by day, how to be air. At night, I wrote in a simple spiral-bound notebook. Nothing fancy. A few lines. No drama. Just the small facts of the day. Today, I didn't touch a knife. No one needed me to. Maybe I'm not needed much at all. The ink bled a little where my hand lingered. My shadow fell across the page. I wasn't trying to punish myself. I wasn't keeping score. I was swallowing bit by bit, a kind of loneliness that dressed itself up as good manners. A loneliness that said, don't impose. Stay small. One afternoon, I was playing with Lily on the living room rug. The sun came in a big square on the carpet. Her crayons were scattered like bright candy. She climbed into my lap and held out a picture book. "Grandma, read," she said, eyes bright, arms lifted. I smiled, the smile I keep just for her. Soft and warm, full of yes. "All right," I said, pulling her in. "Let's read this one." But before I could start, Emily's voice came from the hallway, steady and calm. "Mom, it's homework time right now. Books after dinner, okay?" The words were gentle. She used the name that had once felt like a blessing, but it still closed something inside me. My mouth shut on its own. I set the book on my lap. I nodded toward my granddaughter. "Another time, sweet girl. We'll read later." I saw Lily's eyes shine in that quick, glassy way children get when disappointment comes too fast. She tried to swallow it, the way kids do when they know what the rules are. She slid off my knees and reached for her pencil. She's a good child. She listens. What surprised me was how my own chest cooled from the inside out. Like a draft had found its way under the door and I couldn't stop it. For years, when Emily called me Mom, I heard in it a kind of permission. You are allowed to be here. You are one of us. Come in. But recently, the same word had begun to sound different. At the end of a sentence, Mom. It felt like the name of a role that came with boundaries. The word made a careful space around me. "Mom, why don't you go lie down early tonight, okay?" "Mom, I'll handle this one." There was kindness in those words. I won't deny it. But somehow, inside their softness, I kept finding a wall. Not rough. Not mean. Just solid. No one was doing anything wrong. No one meant me harm. And yet, I could feel it happening all the same. I was becoming an outsider in a house where my toothbrush lived. That was the truth. One quiet evening, I sat at the little shelf where I keep Robert's photo, his old watch beside it. A stubby candle burned low. I lit the wick. The small flame shivered and steadied. "Robert," I said, barely above a whisper, "I think this may not be my place anymore." The flame quivered as if it had heard me. "I don't know where I would go," I went on. "I used to think being alone would be the hardest thing. But being alone inside your own family?" I shook my head. That might be the worst kind of alone there is. I didn't sob. I didn't wail. I just pressed my face into the pillow that night and let the tears come without sound. Salt and heat, wet cotton. Breathing in, breathing out. And then a thought that would not leave me. How long is it all right for me to stay? The next morning, I got up in the dark like always. No humming appliances. No footsteps. just the soft push of the heater coming on. I went to the kitchen and set a small blue teapot on the stove. I could have made coffee, but tea felt kinder to the hour. Steam rose. I poured. The smell of chamomile loosened the tight place behind my ribs. I sat in a chair by the window and looked out at the quiet street. A jogger passed in a neon jacket. The sky was the color of a pearl. I thought small, practical thoughts. Maybe I'll move my cleaning to later in the day. Maybe I'll step back from pickup this week and let Emily try a different routine. I pictured myself taking one step back. Not a big step. Not dramatic. Just one more quiet inch. If I did it softly enough, no one would notice. No one would be troubled. No one would have to say, "Please don't." It felt like sinking into my own shadow. When do you stop being somebody's mother? Where does that line fall? The question went down into me like a stone into a lake. It didn't splash. It just sank and rested on the bottom. And still. I couldn't give up the last little hope that warmed my palms. When I thought about tomorrow, the hope of being needed. Not all the time. Not like before. Just enough. Just so it mattered that I was there. November 24, 2024. I had no idea that date would press itself into me like a seal. I wasn't looking for meaning. I was only moving through another evening in a house I was still trying to call home. That night, I sat at the table when dinner was ready. Emily had cooked. The spread looked beautiful. Colorful vegetables. A bright salad. A roast that glowed under the kitchen lights. I could see the work in it. The care. The time she had taken after a long day. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. "Let's eat." I took up my fork. I took a small bite. And I was surprised. The salt hit hard and fast. My mouth pulled tight. Without thinking, I reached for my water glass. I glanced around, small and careful, to see if anyone else noticed. Daniel ate without looking up. Emily smiled at the plate she had made. Lily, though? Lily's little face scrunched. She nudged the meat to the side and began spooning plain rice into her mouth, slow and solemn. It was such a small thing. A grandmother's whisper before she could stop herself. "Sweetheart," I said very softly, leaning just an inch toward Emily, keeping my voice warm. "Maybe next time a touch less salt? The flavors are so good. They'd shine even more." I thought I was helping. I swore I was trying to be gentle. My smile was there. My love was there. It was only a suggestion. The fork hit the plate. A hard sound. The air tightened. Emily raised her head. Her face held mine in a straight, cool stare. And her voice sharp, louder than I had ever heard it in that kitchen cut across the table. "Shut up! You're just a widow!" The room stopped. I swear the clock on the wall stopped too. Daniel's eyes dropped to his napkin. He didn't move. Lily froze, her small hands gripping her fork and looking from her mother to me, back and forth, trying to measure what had just broken. I couldn't find my voice. For a long breath, I had none. Just a widow. 2 little words, simple as tin. But they scraped 35 years of marriage from my story, as if it had been chalk on a sidewalk. In those words, I wasn't a woman who had held her husband's hand while he slipped away. I wasn't a mother who raised a son through lean years and sick seasons. I wasn't a steady set of hands in a house that needed steady. I wasn't the person who had wished every day to be useful. In those words, I was an absence with a name. I did not argue. I didn't even try. Something in me understood that if I stayed there, trading words across that table, I would lose myself completely. I set my fork down. The sound was small and careful. I folded my napkin. I bowed my head the way I do when I mean thank you, even when I'm not sure who I'm thanking. "That was dinner," I whispered. "Thank you." Then I stood and went down the hall to my room. I eased the door closed behind me and let my breath out in a long, ragged line. Pain gathered in my chest like a fist and tightened. It felt like the floor of a house you've lived in for decades, giving way under your feet. No crash. Just a slow, quiet sinking. I slid open the closet door and pulled out a small rolling suitcase. I had bought it after the funeral when I first thought I might try living on my own. I tucked it away then, telling myself I didn't need it. That family had given me a place to rest. I hadn't touched it since. Well? I said to the empty room, my voice almost calm. I guess tonight is the night. I began to pack. Socks. A few changes of clothes. My toiletry bag. The old sweater that still smelled like a fall day at the shore, salt and wind, and Robert's laugh in the distance. My hands shook, and I noticed it. Not with fear, not with anger, with something like resolve that had been waiting for me for a long time. At the back of the dresser, I found a small cardboard box I didn't remember tucking there. Inside was a single photograph. The three of us. Robert with his arm around me, young and tall, his hair still full. Daniel, a boy with grass stains on his knees, eyes lit up like summer. Me, smiling in a way I didn't even know I remembered how to do. The sun was behind us, turning the edges of our hair to gold. I held the picture with both hands. Closed my eyes. Let the warmth of that old moment fill me from the center out. Back then, we were green and busy and always tired. But joy lived in that house like a tenant who paid the rent on time. You can see it in the way our shoulders leaned toward each other. You can see it in the way Robert's mouth is open mid-laugh, like he's telling some tiny joke he knows will make me roll my eyes and love him more. I slipped the photo into the front pocket of my suitcase. I took Robert's wristwatch from the little memorial shelf, wrapped it in a handkerchief, and tucked it into a safe corner. I blew out the candle. The smoke curled up, sweet and soft. In the doorway, I stood for a long minute, fingers resting on the knob. I listened. The house was quiet. The car went by outside. Somewhere a dog barked twice and fell silent. I thought about the breakfasts I had made at that stove. The toys I had picked up from that rug. The songs Lily and I had sung in that hallway on rainy days. I thought about walking out and not turning back. I thought about knocking, once, on Millie's door to tell her I loved her to the moon. I thought about leaving a note on the kitchen counter for Daniel. I thought about all the ways we say goodbye without using the word. Then I did the simplest thing. I rolled the suitcase to the front door. I set it upright. I put on my coat. I took one more breath of that house, of that life, and I stepped out into the November night. The air was cold and clean. The stars were thin and far away. My breath puffed in little clouds as I walked down the driveway. Somewhere behind me, a light flicked on in an upstairs room. I didn't look up to see which one. I had told you at the start how that dinner ended. I had told you I stood and walked out. Now you know the steps in between. The quiet days, the soft yeses, the careful no's. The way I tried to take up less space, then less, until the floor gave way, and the only place left to stand was outside. I didn't know where I would go that night. A motel near the train station maybe, or a friend with a spare bed and a listening heart. I didn't know what tomorrow would cost, or how long my savings would stretch. It didn't matter yet. What mattered was this. I was still myself. I still knew how to hold a key, to open a door, to step into the dark and trust that morning would come. It always had. It would again. Just a widow. I don't want to believe those words had the power to erase my whole past. I don't want to give them that kind of claim on my life. And yet, as a plain fact, that one sentence made me lose my place in my own home. I told myself no one was to blame. I told myself everyone had their reasons. Even so, somewhere inside me, a hurt rose up so sharp it made me want to wail like a child. But I didn't cry. Crying wouldn't have brought a single pair of eyes back to me. Late that night, when the house had gone quiet and the hour turned slow, I switched off my bedroom lamp and stepped out into the dim hallway. A light still glowed in the living room. The flicker of the TV brushed the wall in pale colors. I heard a little laughter, then the soft clink of dishes. Someone had settled in with a late-night mug of tea and a movie. A cozy scene, and none of it had room for me. I went down the stairs, careful with each footfall. Heel to toe, slow and silent. The kind of moving you learn when your baby is sleeping, and you'd rather swallow a sneeze than wake them. I stopped at the small memorial shelf by the bookcase. Robert's photo was there. His old watch lay beside it. A candle waited in a little blue dish. I sat. "Listen," I whispered, barely breathing the words. "Tell me something." Did I get this wrong? Is living with family supposed to mean making yourself smaller and smaller until you fit into the crack no one sees? There was no answer. Of course not. But I felt, as I have felt so many nights, a warmth in my chest like his voice traveling through it. You did enough, Maggie, I could almost hear him say. You did more than enough. It's all right now. My eyes filled. The first tear surprised me, flipping warm down my cheek. I didn't stop it. I let the second come, and the third. There are nights when it is right to cry. I gave myself that permission. Before I stood, I lit the candle. The wick caught, the flame trembled, then steadied. I sat in that small light and said two things, soft as a breath. Thank you, and I'm sorry. On the shelf was Robert's mug, the brown stoneware one he always reached for. On Saturday mornings, I lifted it with both hands and took a sip of the water I'd left there. A simple thing, but it felt like a vow I could feel in my bones. On the way back to my room, I glanced into the kitchen. The counter held a neat row of bagels for the morning, wrapped in a plastic sleeve. The refrigerator hummed. Through the glass bin I could see a stack of pre-made salads and parfait cups. The kind you buy in a rush on your way home, all labeled and tidy. Not the oatmeal and scrambled eggs I used to cook. Not the lunches I packed with a little note tucked under the napkin. The sight was cold somehow. Not cruel, just cold. And I thought, I am no longer needed in the morning of this house. Back in my room, I sat beside my small suitcase. I took a plain manila envelope from the dresser drawer. Inside were the things I had kept together for years. Savings account. Statements, the life insurance paperwork with my name circled in blue pen, photocopies of old deeds and titles from the life Robert and I built. A small, loose sheaf of proof that I had once signed things, owned things, managed things, that I knew how. I looked at those papers for a long time. Then I made a decision. I would not wait to fade. I would not let myself dissolve in place, day by day, like a salt lick under rain. I would draw my own curtain. I would choose the ending of this chapter by standing up and walking out of it. That night, I did just that. You already know, I took my coat, my bag, my suitcase. I closed the front door behind me, quietly, respectfully, like a guest leaving a wake. I walked down the driveway into the cold November air. I found a cheap, clean motel near the station. The night clerk slid a key card across the counter. The bedspread had a simple pattern. The heater clicked on and off. I set the suitcase by the window, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the mattress. I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked, then ticked again. The red numbers changed. The dark stayed dark. Inside my chest, thoughts churned without finding words. Am I truly nothing more than just a widow? As a mother, as a wife, after all these years, is there really nothing left that holds? No answer came. None that could hold its shape. So I did the old, steady thing I know how to do when meaning slips. I opened my spiral-bound notebook and wrote, November 24, 2024. Today I learned how deep a single word can cut. Today I saw how one sentence can freeze everything warm in a person's chest. I stood up from the table without a sound. Maybe that was the last piece of dignity left to me. I set the pen down. I turned off the lamp. The room fell into soft motel darkness. Out past the drawn curtain, a parking lot light shivered and steadied in the wind. I watched it for a while. Then I closed my eyes. Quietly, deeply, with a kind of certainty I could feel in my breath. In the morning, I would go. I wouldn't say a thing. I had already said everything by leaving. Dawn came thin and pearly. The clock nudged past 6. I cracked the window and let the cold air bite. I filled my lungs. It was clean and sharp and new. The suitcase was ready packed the night before. A few clothes, my toiletries, the envelope with the papers, my checkbook, and Robert's photo, wrapped in a soft gray scarf I used to wear to Sunday service when the wind came off the river. I went downstairs, settled my small bill, and stepped out into the waking town. The streets were almost empty. Somewhere, a train called a long, low note. The walk to the station took about 15 minutes. My hands were tucked under the shawl on my shoulders, and even with the cold, I felt a warmth growing from the inside out. A warmth I recognized. The warmth you feel when you let yourself do the thing you know is right. This is right, Margaret, I said to myself, using my own name the way you do with a friend who needs a reminder. This is the way forward. Keep walking. At 6020, I boarded the train. I slid into a seat, rested my suitcase against my shins, and wrapped my arms around it. Its weight felt almost familiar. Like travel. Like years ago, when Robert and I would take short trips up the coast or out to the mountains, just the two of us, the hum of the tracks underfoot, the steady sway, the promise of arrival. This time was different. The destination, the meaning. This time, I was traveling as myself alone, not as a wife, not as a mother living under someone else's roof. I was choosing my own last stop. Not the last stop of my life. I hope not. But the end of this chapter, and the quiet start of the next. The sky outside the window softened, pale gray tilting toward white. Roof lines caught the first light. A scattering of leaves skittered along a sidewalk as we slipped past. The world looked new, even though it was the same streets, the same river bends, the same bridges I'd crossed for years. Do you remember? I asked Robert inside my head, looking at his picture through the fabric of that scarf. You used to say, when we're old, let's spend some time where it's quiet. Somewhere by the water. Maybe a little monastery on the Hudson. We could read. Walk. Be still. You said it like a joke, half serious, smiling at me in that way you had. Back then, I laughed. I called him a romantic. I said we were city people. I let the idea float off like a balloon. Now I understand. My destination was a small monastery tucked above the river, far on the other side of the morning. A plain chapel with wooden pews. A guest house with a handful of rooms. A small library that smells like dust and oil soap. A garden where volunteers tend the beds. And a path down the hill where you can hear the water talk to the stones. People live there with quiet purpose. They know how to make a place feel simple and safe. They welcome guests who need stillness. They understand how grief curls itself into the corners of a day. When Robert was strong, he once said, if it comes to it, I'd want to finish somewhere like that. He said it lightly, leaning on the porch rail, watching a red-winged blackbird flash its color along the fence. I treated it like banter. I brushed it off, smiling. Now, sitting on that early train, I finally felt the truth of his wish. Okay, I told him, I'll go. I'll carry your picture with me. I'll sit where the light falls through simple windows. I'll let the quiet do its work. I'll learn to be here without being in anyone's way. Quiet. No burden to anyone. Watch the sky. Listen to the wind. Live by little bells and honest chores. Eat what's set before me. Sleep when night asks me to. Wake when morning calls my name. That sounded right. For now, it sounded like salvation. Town by town, we went north. Past backyards and small parks. Past car lots and diners and a single rusted swing that made my heart ache for. Lily's easy laugh. The ache rose and fell. It didn't break me. I rested my palm on the scarf-wrapped frame. Robert, I said inside, I'm going to honor what you hoped for. I'm going to make something quiet and clean out of what's left. I'm going to keep from becoming bitter. I'm going to forgive as best I can. Not today. Not all at once. But slowly. Like the river wears the rock, the train settled into its rhythm. The day opened. The light came fully. I didn't know much. I didn't have a plan longer than a few stations and a phone call to a guest master at the other end who had once told me, come if you need a place to rest. But I knew this. I was still myself. I still knew how to hold a key, how to open a door, how to step into the cold and trust the day to warm me. I still knew how to leave one life and begin another, quietly, firmly, without asking permission, and that would be enough to carry me where I was going. I reached the river town a little after 10 in the morning. I stepped off the train, crossed the quiet concourse, and headed for the cab line. Excuse me, I said to the first driver, holding out a folded slip of paper. Could you take me to this address? He glanced at it, nodded once, and pulled away from the curb without a word. Out the window, late autumn Hudson Valley passed by. Old brick storefronts. White steeples. Tall maples with leaves gone copper and red. The river flashed silver through breaks in the trees. It was all strangely familiar, like a childhood book you haven't opened in years, and yet, to the woman I was now, it also felt like another world. We turned up a narrow road where stone walls ran low along the shoulders. At 11:30, the cab eased to a stop at a small monastery tucked above the water. A simple gate. A gravel drive. Wind moving the last of the leaves so they let go and drifted down, one by one, soft as breath. "Welcome," the guestmaster said, stepping forward with a warm smile. He was a compact man in a plain sweater, his gray hair close-cropped, his eyes steady. "We've been expecting you." I set my small suitcase down and gave him a quiet nod. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for taking me in on such short notice." He led me through a modest door and into the guest house. The floors were old wood, carefully kept. A small sitting room held a few straight-backed chairs, a low table, and a single lamp with a linen shade that softened the light. On the table sat a ceramic mug already filled with tea. "Please," he said, motioning to the chair. "Rest a moment." I sat. I took a long breath. My hands lay still in my lap. Then I reached into my bag and brought out a thick, plain envelope. "These are the documents," I said, the words steady, gentle. Inside were the deed to the house in Edison, New Jersey. The one still in my name, my bank information, and a donation agreement I had. Signed with a nonprofit, an honest 501c3 that runs transitional housing and support services for older adults. "I want the house," I said, and my voice caught just a little, "to be used for people like me. People pushed to the edges of their own families. People who don't have anywhere to go." Not in shame. In respect for the size of what I was saying out loud, the guestmaster was quiet for a few breaths. Then he nodded slowly, the kind of nod that says he has heard not just my words but the life behind them. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "this choice you're making, it will ease many hearts. More than you will ever know." Something inside me loosened. A thread pulled free. Tears rose, sudden and bright, but they didn't fall. I smiled instead. Not a happy smile. Not a smile to show anyone else. A small smile of release. At the close of my life, I had finally chosen, by my own hand, to let things go. To ask for nothing. To blame no one. To step back quietly. To let the wind take the last pieces of me and set them down in places that needed them more. Maybe that is the kind of freedom I had been looking for all along. Toward evening, I walked alone in the little garden behind the chapel. There was a small pond there. Flat water. Still surface. A few red and gold leaves floated without a sound. "Robert," I murmured, my hands linked behind my back, my steps careful on the path. "You always loved this kind of view." Just then, from somewhere I couldn't see, a faint ribbon of incense drifted in the air. Someone was praying in the chapel. I didn't know their face. I didn't know their name. But the knowledge of them, that they were there, hands folded, words offered to the quiet, made me feel steadier on my feet. For the first time that day, I knew I wasn't alone. In this world, there are people who pray without being called by name, people who lift you up without ever saying a word to you directly. Sometimes, that is enough to keep a person standing. When I returned to my small room, I found a single card set on the seat of the chair. Cream paper. Black ink in a neat, careful hand. "Thank you for being here." I held the card in both hands. I pressed my palm to my chest. Since the night I walked out of that house in Edison, no one had said thank you to me. Not once. You can spend years serving, years stepping back without complaint. You can exit a scene to keep the peace, and still, the word you need most may never find you. That one line on that one quiet card wrapped itself around the sore place I had been carrying like a soft scarf. "Thank you," I whispered back. "Truly, thank you." I turned, and I told Robert the same. "Love," I said in my heart. "I'm grateful to be here." I am. This place was not an ending. Not for me. It felt like a beginning, even if no one called my name in the hallway. Even if no one said, "Can you help?" Just being here, just breathing in this room, began to feel like it was enough. That night, under a small lamp with a warm shade, I set Robert's photo on the desk and spoke to him the way I always have. "I'm quiet," I told him. "I'm comfortable. I think I understand, finally, why you once said you'd like to finish somewhere like this." Outside the window, the wind moved through the tall trees. The sound was a hushed, steady whisper. It sounded like kindness. It sounded like him. In the morning, once the final documents were filed, I would be a woman with no assets in her own name. No fixed address. No mailbox that belonged solely to me. And still, I felt no fear. Because for the first time, I could feel a life in my hands that wasn't tied to any one place or to any one king's expectations. That afternoon, in the monastery's little library, I sat with a plain mug of tea and let the hours pass with a soft, easy pace. Through the window, the wind rode the trees and made a clean sound. In that quiet, my phone buzzed once against the tabletop. I picked it up, surprised. A message from my attorney, Mr. B.A. Green, in New Brunswick. As of today, it read, in his tidy, formal style, the transfer of the real property and the designated financial assets has been completed. Notices have been sent to all interested parties. Please confirm receipt at your convenience. There was nothing flowery in his words. Line by line, they were plain. They went straight into me like warm water. Everything was finished. The house in Edison, all the rooms Robert and I once filled with our days. The space I had once promised myself I would defend at all costs. The space called home. I had let it go. And to my own surprise, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like returning something that had always been meant to pass through our hands into other hands. Night fell early. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the small, dark window. On the nightstand, my phone glowed with a list of missed calls. The same number repeating, one after another. Daniel. A dozen tries. Maybe more. Then a long text appeared, his words crowding the screen. "Mom, why did you do this? Strangers came by the house this afternoon and posted a notice on the front door saying we had to vacate by the end of the day. We didn't know anything about this. You didn't tell us. If you had just talked to us, we could have figured something out. I didn't know you felt this way. I didn't know." I read every word. Slowly. Carefully. No tears came. Not then. Somewhere deep inside, I understood something simple and hard at the same time. Whatever needed to be said should have been said long ago. A second message arrived almost at once. This one was from Emily. "This is too one-sided. This is not what a mother does. Cutting your family off because of your own feelings? That's just payback. Payback." I looked at the word for a long while. I felt a small stirring in my chest. Not anger, not even hurt, more like a ripple moving across still water. I closed my eyes and asked myself, plainly, did I do this to get even? Was this revenge? I sat there in the quiet and searched myself. I thought about the long months of stepping back, the day I stood from the table without a sound, the train north in the cold morning, the garden path by the pond, the soft card in neat black ink, the tea cooling in my hands. I asked again, slower this time, what did I choose? What did I release? What did I mean by it? I stayed with the questions, letting them settle like leaves on that pond, one, then another, until all of them lay still. I listened for an answer that wasn't harsh. I waited for the kind of truth that doesn't rush or shout. Out in the dark, the wind went on talking through the trees. Inside, the lamp hummed softly. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed once, low and kind, and the sound faded the way good sounds do. I breathed in. I breathed out, and I held my own heart as gently as I knew how. No, that's not what happened. I did not lash out. I did not try to teach anyone a lesson. I simply chose to walk away. I told no one. I left no blame behind. Quietly, with whatever dignity I could still hold. After I read the words, just a widow, I understood something plain. My voice no longer counted in that family. Not as a mother. Not as a person whose years might matter. Not as me. So I did the only thing left to do. I stayed silent. I turned my back. I went. Even so, the next morning, when the messages kept coming, I opened the reply field and typed a single line. I didn't do anything. I only kept quiet because I was told to be quiet, and I left because I was told not to speak. I tapped send. Then I switched off the phone. Right then it felt like some tight wire inside me finally unhooked and fell. A deep hush filled my chest. Not emptiness, not numbness. A quiet that felt honest. A quiet I could live in. I would not need to carry anyone's notice tone anymore. Or anyone's heat or blame. That evening, in a small side chapel at the monastery, I sat with Robert's photo. A single votive candle flickered next to it, soft gold around his smile. I folded my hands. I bowed my head. Robert, I said, I'm not anyone's mom here anymore. That name seems to have slipped away from me. I took a breath. Then I added, that's all right. The fact that I really loved someone in this life. No one can take that away. Outside, the moon climbed, light as a held breath. It shone through the thin curtains and laid a pale ribbon across the floorboards. It looked, to me, like a quiet yes. The next day, the guest master found me in the hallway and asked, in his gentle way, how did your family take the news? I smiled. A small smile. The kind that doesn't need much. Most of us only realize what we've lost after it's gone, I said. He waited for more. I gave him nothing else. That silence. That was my last word on the matter. It was the only word that felt true. That night, after the lamps were turned down and the house went still, I lay awake a long time. The moon threw a pale square onto the wall. It sat there like a window to some other place. Was my choice the right one? I asked the square of light. Because sometimes you have to ask the darkness out loud. I hadn't acted from spite. I knew that. I also knew the choice would hurt somebody. The stung words in those messages were proof. And yet, I felt no regret. I had only been looking for a place to stand. A place that wouldn't require me to disappear daily to keep the peace. A place where my small, steady heart could keep time without apology. Then my thoughts turned to the house in Edison, the one I had let go with my own hand. I wondered what it would be now. A shell? A problem? Or something else? I pictured a woman with nowhere to land stepping over that threshold one gray afternoon. I pictured her setting a mug in the kitchen sink and laughing once, softly, because she had a roof over her head. I pictured a quiet moment in a hallway where a photo sits on a simple shelf, and the person who lives there pauses, touches the frame, and says a name with care. The picture warmed me from the inside out. If a place that held my ending, I thought, can become the place someone else begins, that's enough. Being able to mean it, that might be my salvation now. The next morning, while I was sweeping the walkway under the bare maples, the woman came up to me. I had seen her twice in the dining room, sitting a table over, hands folded before eating. She looked a touch older than me. She wore a soft cardigan and good walking shoes. You're new, she said, her voice kind, not prying. I saw a light in the little memorial corner late last night. I straightened, leaned the broom against my hip, and nodded. Yes, I'm Margaret Thompson. Got here last night. She smiled, a smile that reaches its eyes. Welcome. It's quiet here, she said, glancing around at the trees and the river shining through them. But it's very warm. It's a place that says yes to who you are, not to your title or your role. Just you. Her words touched something raw and tender in me. They steadied my throat. Right. Here I am not mom, not mother-in-law, not the widow. I am Margaret Thompson. That is all. And somehow, that simple truth settled me like a hand on my shoulder. She pointed past me to a small garden bed off the walk. There, a white camellia shrub, late and brave for this valley, had held on to a few blossoms. See that bush? She said. They tell me it takes care of itself through most of the year. even when no one's watching, even when no one's fussing over it. It sets its own roots. It keeps growing. And then, when morning comes, someone always says, "Would you look at that?" It's beautiful. I took her words as a gift. I tucked them into my pocket like a note. I wonder if I could be like that, I said, mostly to myself. You can, she said, nodding as if she had more than hope to go on. You will. That night, in the little lounge where the art supplies live, I took out a wide sheet of paper and a brush from the shared jar. I set the paper straight. I stood up to make more room in my shoulders, and then, slowly, carefully, I wrote my name in big, even strokes. Margaret Thompson. No, Mrs. Dack. No, Mom. No one's hope pinned to it. Just the person I am. I looked at the letters until they stopped looking like letters and started feeling like a heartbeat. All my life, I had kept trying to become something, a better wife, a helpful mother, a useful person in someone else's house. But here, in this quiet place, I finally understood. The real question is simpler. It is, who will I be when I die? Not what. Who? Days began to line up behind one another like good stones in a wall. At 5 each morning, the chapel bell sounded, a small, honest bell. I woke to it, sat up, and put my feet on the floor. I warmed my hands around a mug of hot water and watched the light come into the trees. Then I swept the walk or wiped the handrails down the hall. The birds started their business. The wind moved through the maples. Somewhere a squirrel scolded the world for its audacity. Like Captor Rection and the Diantine Stad, they reminded me I was alive. Breakfast came at 7:30. We took our places without fuss. Sometimes someone gave a simple blessing. Thank you for this food. Thank you for this day. And we began. Oatmeal, scrambled eggs, stewed apples if the kitchen had them, coffee that tasted like the morning itself. Nothing fancy. Everything made with care. Mrs. Thompson, how's breakfast? One of the kitchen folks asked me. A woman with quick hands and a good laugh that came out of her like a bell. She said my name easily, like it belonged to me. I couldn't help it. I smiled. Being called by my own name felt like a small light turning on in a room I had almost forgotten. It's lovely, I said. These stewed apples take me right back to breakfast with my husband. We used to make them on cold mornings like this. She squinted with a smile. I'm glad, she said, and turned back to the stove. It was only a few seconds. The kind of exchange people have 100 times a day. But for me, it was a hinge. A small door opening. Not Mom. Not, hey. Not. Could you not? Just Margaret Thompson, a person sitting at a table with a plate and a past. The hours in the middle of the day were simple and good. I watered the garden beds when they looked thirsty. I shelved books in the little library, cloth-bound biographies with the gold, rubbing off their spines. Old devotionals with notes in the margins from hands I'll never meet. Sometimes I took up a pen and wrote 3 lines about the sky, or the sound the broom makes on brick, or the way grief sets down its bags for an hour if you give it a chair and a warm drink. At first, my hand shook on the page. I had to breathe and remind myself I knew how to make letters. But each day, it came back, a muscle remembering, a voice remembering. Once, at the long table in the art room, a woman read one of my small poems. She held the page away from her, then close up, the way we do now. Finally, she said, "Margaret, this is lovely." Something loosened under my ribs. Some knot that had been there for a year untied itself a little. It wasn't the praise that got me. It was the feeling of being seen. Not for my use, not for my effect on a room, for the simple fact that I was a person who made a thing. Back in Edison, I was Mom, or Ma, or would you please not, or that's not how we do it now. All those names have their time and their place. But here, I am Margaret. People look up when I enter a room and say, "Good morning, Margaret," and I say, "Good morning," back. And that is the entire story of it. One afternoon, I found myself thinking again about that house I let go of, the kitchen I cleaned down to the corners, the living room where Lily and I made paper boats and watched them sink. the hallway where I kept Robert's photo on a little shelf and lit a candle before bed. Someday, I thought, someone else will stand in that kitchen and cut an apple. Someone else will laugh in that living room and set their coffee down on the table I bought 30 years ago. Someone else will pause at that shelf. Maybe they'll put their own picture there, maybe not, and they'll whisper a name that matters to them. And in the quiet after that whisper, the house will feel less like a box and more like a home. I held that thought close like a warm stone. That evening, I sat again in the chapel with Robert's photo. The room smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax. The last light of the day made a pale square on the floor. "We did all right," I told him. "We did the best we knew how. And now I'm doing this the best way I can too." He didn't answer. He couldn't. But I felt his steadiness anyway. Not as a voice. More like the way a hand remembers the weight of another hand. Without needing to hold it again. I cannot fix what other people think I have broken. I cannot go back to a table where my name meant less than my absence. I can wake when the bell rings. I can sweep a clean line across a walkway. I can drink hot water and take slow breaths. I can be Margaret, just Margaret, and let that be enough. Someday, I may be asked to say more. To answer for choices that were mine to make. If that day comes, I will hold to the single sentence I already sent. I didn't do anything. I kept quiet because I was told to. I left because I was asked not to speak. And then I will let silence be my final word. Not a weapon, not a wall. A small, honest space where a person can stand. Where a person can breathe, even if no one applauds. Like Inez, even if no one sees. Like a white camellia out in the wind, rooted, blooming when it's time. And each morning, if anyone cares to look, beautiful in its own quiet way. How precious it is, how deeply I feel it now at this age more than ever before. Most nights, after the house has quieted and the hall lights are low, I step into the little chapel or sit at the small memorial shelf in my room. I speak to Robert's photograph the way I always have, softly, as if he has only stepped into the next room and can still hear me when I lean close. "Robert," I tell him, my hands folded on my lap, "I found something here." I found my name again. Not as somebody's wife, not as somebody's mother, as myself. Margaret. The first time I said it out loud, a truth rose up in me as steady as breath. Getting older is not only a story of losing things. Not at all. There is also the stripping away, layer by thin layer, until what is left, just the plain, honest center shines through. Essential thing. The part that never depended on anyone else to define it. One afternoon in the little library, a narrow room that smells like wood polish, and old paper. I pulled down a small, time-worn book from a low shelf. It was a collection of essays called The Silent Gift. I didn't know the author, but the title felt like a hand on my shoulder. I turned the pages slowly until one passage stopped me and held me fast. "What we truly give one another," it said, "isn't words or wealth. It is the simple, enduring memory that we were here." I nodded to the empty room. I nodded to myself. Yes. I left the house in Edison. My shape is no longer moving through those rooms. But the truth that I was there remains. It remains in someone's memory, somewhere. It will settle in the corners the way sunlight settles, quietly, without asking permission. Maybe one day it will loosen a fist. Maybe it will become a moment of thinking again. Maybe it will become a small, clear seeing. I hope so. I hope for it without noise. Of course, there were no calls. No drop-ins. No letters. Nothing. The phone sat still. The doorbell stayed silent. The mailbox was empty for weeks at a time. That was all right. My choice belonged to me alone. I didn't make it to be understood. I didn't make it to win any arguments. I made it to live with dignity. Simple as that. Even if no one applauds. Even if no one offers thanks. If I can be a person I myself can care for quietly, steadily, that might be the truest rescue age has to offer. Feeling it settle inside me, I realized I had finally been able to set down a title I had carried for a long time. I had been mom for so many years. I am grateful for every one of them. But here now, I could lay that word gently on the shelf and still stand. Still breathe. Still be. One evening near sunset, I sat on the stone step by the side door and tipped my head back to look at the sky. A few winter birds flew low and fast, small shadows moving with purpose. The air smelled like wood smoke and pine. I let my breath slow. I let a whisper slip out. Robert, I think I have, at last, begun to live my own life. A clean wind drifted by and carried a hint of cinnamon and warm flour from the kitchen, where someone was baking for tomorrow's breakfast. The smell touched my heart, the way Robert's letters used to. Gentle, sure as a hand I know. Thank you for being here, the breeze seemed to say. Thank you for staying. December 25th, Christmas morning. The air didn't feel cold so much as clear. Every sound seemed etched. A bell from somewhere downriver. Our tire on gravel. Hose call. The light was bright and honest. It had been weeks, no contact. No voices from the life I had left. In my chest, I had started to tuck that family away, not as a wound, but as a far-off scene you can name without needing to walk back into it. A distant landscape I could look at without stepping closer. Then, that morning, there it was. A small envelope in my mail cubby by the front desk, plain as anything. My name in round, careful letters. To Grandma Maggie. My hands shook as I broke the seal. A single sheet of wide-ruled paper slid out, folded twice. A little star cut from construction paper yellow, sprinkled with glitter, fell into my lap. I opened the letter and read, Dear Grandma, for Christmas, I asked Santa for one thing, please let Grandma get a letter. Mom said you're not coming back. But I want to see you. Grandma, your chicken noodle soup is my favorite. And when the lemonade was a little sour, that was funny and I liked it. Where are you? Do you remember me? Can you read picture books with me again? I love you, Grandma. Lily? When I finished reading, I couldn't move. I pressed the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. Tears slid warm down my face. One, then another, then another. Quiet tears. Tears that bless, not scold. That night I walked away. I told myself I had let go of everything. Name, place, role. But here was a voice that still needed me. A small, brave voice that had crossed the distance to find me anyway. I sat before Robert's photo again. The candle beside it breathed a small, steady light. Robert, I whispered, did you hear? She remembers me. Not just as Grandma, maybe. As Margaret. As someone who lives in her heart. Perhaps this letter wasn't asking for an answer. Perhaps it was simply a gift. Even so, I understood what I needed to do. Offer something back. Open my hand again, even if only a little. That afternoon I found my stationery, a white sheet, smooth and clean. I lifted my pen and let the words come slow and plain. Dear Lily, thank you for your letter. Of course I remember you. I remember the books we read and your laugh that made the corners of your eyes shine. Those are treasures I keep safe. The little star you made is beautiful. I put it right next to Grandpa Robert's picture. It sparkles when the light comes through the window. About the lemonade. If it was a little too sour, that was Grandma squeezing one extra lemon without thinking. I'm sorry. But you saying you liked it made me smile so big. Someday, we will read a book together again. Until then, be brave and kind. I love you very much. Always, Grandma Maggie. I slipped the letter into an envelope, wrote her name carefully on the front, and pressed the flap closed. As I set the pen down, an old memory rose up, a stack of unsent letters from years ago. Things I never found a way to say. Feelings that lived in a drawer, tucked behind sweaters, because the house had no ear for them. But now I was sending something simple and kind out into the world. A word with warmth in it. A small light in a small envelope. It felt like a new beginning. It felt like breath. Near dusk, I stepped into the garden to stretch my legs. From the path beyond the gate came the bright tumble of children's voices. A daycare group, or a class on a winter walk, had wandered up for a look at the river. One little boy caught my eye and called out, cheerful and sure. Hi. Hi, I answered and lifted my hand. In that small wave, I felt something rise in me and settle. These hands. They can still hold. They still know how. Growing old does not mean the end of everything. There are things that stay. There are things that deepen. Quiet strength. A steadiness that isn't loud. I was not a woman who left only in sorrow. This letter, tucked safe in my drawer, told me so. It proved it to me with glue stick glitter and round, brave letters. That night, I opened my spiral notebook and wrote, I am no longer mom or wife. But somewhere I am still grandma. And here, at last, I am Margaret, living as myself. From the chapel, carried by the winter air, came the soft chime of a small bell. Not a warning, a welcome. As if some kindly hand had tapped the air and said, go on. Carry on. I listened. Then, in the quiet of my own chest, I said her name again. One time, gentle and sure so, no one else could hear. Thank you for remembering. Your remembering lights my way from here. I closed my eyes. The end of a life is not something you wait to be granted by another. It is something you begin to name for yourself. Slowly. Plainly. With the days you have. I am making my preparations. I can feel that truth in my bones. I'm not afraid. I don't feel regret. Because, after I finally set everything down and walked away, something came back to me like a small lamp in the dark, a gift, plain and bright. A single letter. Do you have words you've been meaning to send? Someone who drifted far. Someone you left mid-sentence. Or a little someone who still calls your name. This very minute could be the beginning of that letter. Family is a living bond you tend while you're still sharing the same daylight. You care for it while they're here. Not later. Not someday. Now. I learned that at the end. I learned it the hard way. And then, at last, I received it. White wide ruled paper. Careful, round letters. A glittering yellow star that fell into my lap. Lily's hand. Her brave voice crossing the distance to find me where I was. Quiet and safe. Beyond the old house and all the titles I'd set down. After I let go of everything, that one envelope found me. It told me I was still held by a small, steady love that knew my name. You, though, you still have time. Pick up a pen. Write 3 honest lines. Say, I was thinking of you. Say, thank you. Say, I'm sorry if that's the truth that's waiting. Put the address on straight. Press the stamp in the corner. Walk it to the box. Listen to the soft clatter when it drops. The heart remembers postmarks. The heart keeps the sound a letter makes when it arrives. Maybe it's someone far away now. Maybe it's someone with a little ache left between you. Maybe it's a child who still looks up when you walk into a room. Start small. Start today. This moment can be the first line. I let everything go, and in the quiet that followed, I was given a single letter. It was enough to light my way. Yours might do the same for you, and for the one who needs it most. You are not late. You are right on time.